Hi there. This is the second part of the videos that I've made for Arkansas All-Region audition music. And in the first part, we worked on the fundamental techniques that will help us with changing registers. And we spent all of that time really working on the first register change, which is from the Chalumeau register up into the Clarion register. So really working on being able to play from A on up to B, and then ending with E major thirds for the senior high music, where we throw G sharp into the mix. And now we'll work on the Altissimo register change. In the senior high music, we have a lot of Altissimo that we have to do, sometimes in the exercises, sometimes in the etudes that we have as well. And in we have to continue E major thirds all the way up into the Altissimo. So right now, I would imagine that any of the clarinet teachers out there will remember what that was like when they were junior high age, junior high into high school, when they started getting parts in band that required them to play into the Altissimo, or they had some exercises they had to play, and what a challenge that was. And a lot of us will just make it work even if we don't know what we're doing. And we'll say, okay, this is the fingering, I'm just going to do it. And many of us will do it incorrectly, we'll do it inefficiently. And one of the ways that we do that is we bite really hard. We try to blow the most air possible. We tense up every muscle in our bodies, especially, around the jaw and the throat and the back of the tongue, and we just go, "Arr!" and we make it work. And it may not work very well. Usually we're not going to be in tune. We won't have a good tone quality, but the note came out, and we're satisfied with that. And then we get to college, and our teacher goes, they might not do that in our face or anything, but after we've left the office. And we have to learn how to do it correctly. So what we're going to work on right now are just a couple of those fundamental basics about playing Altissimo. And fortunately, if you're watching this and you can pick up some of these things, you'll find that it's actually not as hard as you thought it was. First off, we have to make sure that our reed is strong enough to handle Altissimo, but that doesn't mean it's the hardest reed we can get our hands on. It has to match the mouthpiece, and not all mouthpieces are created equal. Some are made to play with a softer reed, so to play with, let's say, a 3 or a 3.5. Other mouthpieces are really made to play with something much stronger, say 4, 4.5, or 5. And it's really a personal preference. It's what you are trying to, what kind of tone quality you're looking for, and the kinds of environments in which you play. So that is something that helps lead us towards the kinds of equipment, specifically mouthpieces, that we tend to prefer. And everybody is different, and there is no one right mouthpiece or one right kind of specific sound that we're looking for. So your reed has to match, and that is something that hopefully your band directors can help you with. If you have access to a professional clarinetist or a college clarinet teacher, they can help make some recommendations. And what's really nice is a lot of the equipment now, since everything is on the internet, you can look up different kinds of equipment, and let's say the Van Doren mouthpieces, for example, because they're very popular and used by a lot of people, their website has all kinds of information about the suggested reed pairings with that. And that's really a good place to start, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in order for the Altissimo register to work, you have to make sure that you have enough reed in your mouth. Now, if you've gotten to the point that you're trying to play Altissimo, hopefully you are doing things that you need to play with a good characteristic sound on the clarinet. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time on as teachers with young students is trying to make sure that they play with enough reed in their mouth. And you can look at it, and if you have a very tiny amount of reed in your mouth like this, like here's your top teeth, here's your bottom teeth, if there's a very tiny amount of reed, there's only so much vibration that can happen. And if you put a little bit more in your mouth, there is more reed that can vibrate. Now, of course, there's diminishing returns, and you can only go so far before it's just a squeak fest. So you have to find the optimal amount of reed for you and your mouthpiece. While we're playing, sometimes we have to find that the idea of adjusting your bottom lip down the reed just a little bit is a really successful way to do that. Sometimes I think about a V with my bottom lip, and I'm trying to point, the bottom point of that V is going just a little further down the reed. I'll give myself the idea that I want to promote as much vibration from that reed as possible. So sometimes just experimenting with the amount of reed we have in our mouth is going to help us be able to get to where the altissimo register will come out a little bit more. Something else that we could do, an exercise that's popular, we have to make sure that our tongue is high enough to begin with, and that's just a general up and forward tongue position. So something you can test yourself with is you play a low C, you add the register key, and then you lean on the G sharp, the throat G sharp key with the side of your index finger. So we're going to change registers by doing that. We'll play the fundamental register, we add the register key, we go up into the clarion register, and then when we pop this, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, it should pop us into the altissimo register, and we want to hear what that's like. It should be an altissimo E, maybe a little out of tune. So popping right there, I want that note, that altissimo note, to really just pop right out very clearly. And if it's not quite in place and seems like it has somewhere to go to get higher, I can experiment with things. I'm going to try to be too low with my tongue position. And we've talked already about the tongue position being E. I'm going to go for O or even Ah, and let's see what happens. Okay, I did not get that same pitch. I might have been able to bring it up, kind of like, a Frank Sinatra scoop up into the note. Let's try that. Okay, you heard me scoop up a little bit. I did that mostly inside my mouth by bringing my tongue a little higher, more close to the E place that I want. So that's a nice feedback exercise we can do to see if we can get an E. And if you're, and if you're not able to play altissimo yet, and you might say, well, then how can I test that? You can try to check in with that pitch. Play it down an octave. Play top space E. Okay, there's the pitch we want. Okay, there I go. I was able to bring it up. I had tried to just keep track of what that E could sound like. Of course, it's just higher. So that's one thing. Another part of that exercise I found is that I want to be really aware of all of the space at the roof of my mouth. So hopefully your hands are clean, and you can take your thumb or your index finger or something, and I want you to stick it in your mouth, and hopefully nobody's watching. I can't see through this screen, so I can't see you. I want you to trace from your hard palate, so the area at the roof of your mouth, kind of right behind your top teeth, and trace that upward path that happens there. I got that place. I'm feeling how much space there is up at the roof of my mouth. And I would imagine for most people, I'm not into the physiology of everybody, and who knows, there could be some variation, but generally it's like the path that takes, it's kind of rougher at the hard palate, and then as it starts feeling softer, there's this huge dome up there that I feel inside my mouth, unless I'm the freak case, I don't know. but there's all this space at the roof of my mouth. Now, when I'm playing the clarinet, and especially Altissimo, I want to be aware of my tongue helping my air travel very high in my mouth and then forward. So if I do that exercise again, I want to feel like, yes, my tongue is very high, but then I also want to develop my awareness and physical sensation of air moving across my tongue and across the roof of my mouth. And it's a very narrow passageway. It's not like I feel this jet stream or anything, but I can feel the sense of that air moving through that very small space, going up, high, and forward until it comes all the way and impacts the reed. So that might be another thing that you can check in with to see about the voicing qualities that we have to engage in order for Altissimo to work. The other thing, we addressed this in the part 1 video about some of the fundamentals, keeping that engagement with the mouthpiece. Now, we don't want to overdo it, and that's a normal thing for us with Altissimo is biting. If you can replace biting, replace what your jaw is really designed to do, which is crush your food, and if you can just engage some pressure into the reed, think about that V down the reed a little bit, and then the sides of your embouchure. Really feel like you are increasing the grip into the sides of the mouthpiece. Hopefully that will keep you doing some productive firming of your embouchure, but not overdoing it and letting it turn into the biting quality that is really inefficient. Okay? Last but not least, airspeed does need to be there. I'm not going to say that we have to blow harder for Altissimo, because I really don't think that's the case. We just have to make sure that it is really delivered consistently. We can't be afraid of the Altissimo. And when we get afraid and self-conscious, we automatically just back off with our air. In this case, you need to just keep it moving forward and be willing to let it be out there. Let it be lively. Be willing to be wrong here. Strong and wrong, I always say. Be willing to make a mistake. And in the comfort of your own home, that can be easier. Sometimes we get to rehearsal and we get a little self-conscious about it, but we've just got to go for it sometimes. All right. Let's see. The final part of the voicing is there's a little bit of fine-tuning that we have to do. We've talked about so far that the tongue is always very up and forward, very high, lots of E. For Altissimo, there's this little bit of fine-tuning that we have to develop. And what it is we find that the tip of our tongue really needs to be up and forward, like as close to the reed as we can keep it. But the back of the tongue actually needs to relax just a little bit. And so we can approach this in several different ways. The first way that we're going to try this right now is by doing a little squeaking on purpose exercise. So really, up till now, you've actually played lots of Altissimo notes in your life as a clarinetist. You just didn't intend to. And that's what squeaks are. They're just high notes that you weren't planning to play. So right now, we're going to do this little squeak exercise where we're going to start on bottom space F sharp, and we're going to try to alternate between that note and squeaking on purpose, which will be a roughly in tune or out of tune C sharp above the staff. And the way that we're going to do that is we will manipulate the back of our tongue quite a bit on purpose right now. So I am going to blow separate air for each pitch. Breath starting everything. I don't want to articulate. I don't want to take my embouchure pressure off of the mouthpiece. And I'm going to alternate between blowing with E and then O to get the squeak note. So it will be like he and ho. Kind of like that. So. Okay, so maybe you want to pause this and try and see what happens and then we'll continue in a moment. Okay, so hopefully you paused me. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. If it didn't work, check back with some of the things we talked about. Do you have enough mouthpiece in your mouth? If you're not sure, try more and see what happens, okay? That's one thing. Maybe your embouchure was doing some things. So when I do this, I'm really trying, as if I'm just playing a long note. I want to just engage and blow my air and stay nice and steady here. Now I'm going to stop the air and restart the air to do the squeak note, but I don't want this embouchure to change. I want to keep the exact same pressure the whole time. So I'm really aware of the muscles there. If I want to breathe any, I can breathe through my nose, I suppose. Okay, so we could try that again. Okay, now, do you feel the back of your tongue moving? There's a change there, right? Maybe for some of you, you would find that by trying to aim a little higher for the squeak note, maybe you need the tip of the tongue to get a little closer to the reed. Maybe you need to feel like it's really traveling in that trajectory. Some of those different things can help out. I also think about the space back further, back of my tongue into my throat area. I'm thinking about space opening upward at the back as well. It's like the trap door opens to the attic or something. So when I have to try to play altissimo, I want lots of space opening up. And really, I mean, the way that you're built there with your sinuses, there's that passageway that goes up and into your sinuses and out your nose even. As you know, if you've like accidentally, snorted out milk or water or something when you start laughing while you're eating. I'm trying to access that space when I'm doing this squeaking thing, okay? Let's go on to the next one, G, and then the squeak note will be a D in the altissimo. If you are getting a squeak, and maybe not the pitch I'm getting, that's okay. That's a good starting place. And I think that the pitch will come along once you discover the optimal amount of vibrating reed in your mouth. And as you start being able to access some of that space up and back as you're doing the squeak and trying the ramp and trying these little different things. If we go on, A flat. Next one, A. Last one for B flat. It works better if you play this this fingering where you, to your A, you add second from the top side key. If you add that one, I call that my side B flat. I use this a lot. It's really a nicer B flat, but it works better to do the squeak note. Okay. So we've done a little bit of squeaking on purpose and experimented with that. This might be something that you need to revisit every day for just a few minutes. Don't spend too much time on this because it will drive you crazy and it will drive everyone around you crazy. If you have a pet, the pet will go away, I'm sure. And if not, they really love you. So after you revisit this a number of days, you might start finding that it works out. And you're discovering then how the back of the tongue is really important for the control and response of the altissimo register. It's a little fine-tuning thing. If I was going to play that in context, if I wanted to play, let's say because we're doing E major thirds, if I played the E major scale all the way up, how am I going to address that with my tongue? Because I'm not going to be playing it like this, right? And that's just not going to work out. So I'm going to start with my E position, and as I get up into the left hand of my upper register and start approaching altissimo, I'm thinking hush. If I say hush in slow motion, you start with the huh and you end with the shh. Feel what your tongue does. The back of your tongue relaxes a little bit. The front of your tongue really goes up and forward and stays up there. So that's what I'm going to be doing in context with the scale. So that's how I get that little bit of fine tuning I need in my tongue. Now, how are we going to continue to work on this? For a lot of you, it will be, a lot of these notes are brand new to you in the Altissimo register. So we've got to learn the fingerings. And the good news, if your teachers have made you play the chromatic scale with correct chromatic fingerings, then you already know the Altissimo fingerings that you're going to need, which is really great to know. So here's a little exercise we can do to help show you what that is. We're going to play your chromatic scale starting down on low A, and basically we're going to go as high as D sharp or E flat and come back down. We're going to play that finger pattern. And we're going to end up, back down to the low A, and when we add the register key to go up, we're going to, the way we're ending it is we're going to go up, add the register key, and go up to an E. So. Okay, if you need to pause me and play that, please do. Now we're going to go on. You just played chromatic scale, and then you added the register key to go from the Chalumeau to the Clarion register. You went, or the fundamental register, up to the next register. We're going to play the exact same pattern, which you can do. Same finger combinations. The only different thing is that you have that thumb and register key in place the whole time. This time when we get to the end, when we get back to E, you're going to lift your left index finger. That effectively is the register key or register opening for the Altissimo register. So. Now, some reminders about that. To get that upper note to come out, which is the C sharp, the first note in the Altissimo register, in order to get that, you really have to make sure that your air is continuing forward. You can't be afraid of it. I'm not going to say that you have to crescendo that. You might even feel like you pick up a little bit of speed, and then right before you open that first tone hole with your finger, you almost can back off just slightly. You just kind of do it that way. Okay, that could be one thing. Of course, you have to make sure that your tongue is continued to stay up and forward, especially up at the tip. That is super crucial right here. You need to make sure that your the middle of your tongue is high enough. And we talked about finding that space at the roof of your mouth, making sure that you feel the air really traveling across there. And of course, do you have enough reed in your mouth? Is the reed strong enough? That always comes back to get us. Okay, finally, if you played the exact same finger combinations that you played in your chromatic scale up till now, there, na, 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 you're not going to have very much covered on the clarinet, and you are going to be out of tune, but that's okay. This is the basic fingering combination that you use with a few additions that we'll talk about. Okay, so we ended. Let's see if we can go on. Same finger pattern. Okay, I was really aware of the roof of my mouth while I played that. I was really feeling the air traveling up and fast and forward across the roof of my mouth, and my tongue really helping keep it up there. I think that when we play in the Altissimo register, the feedback that we get, it wants to loosen our embouchure. It wants to push our tongue down, and we have to do the opposite of that. We have to be proactive and really be up and forward the whole time. Okay, the actual fingerings now that we need in this situation. I've got some that up on the screen here, which are some standard fingerings. And C sharp, like I said, is the first one where we've got that open. We have thumb and register, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, and that's it. Everything above that, we should add top shelf top key is what I call that, or the E flat key for the upper register. And if you notice on the fingerings on the screen there, when we go to D, you can see that key colored in. So we have to do this thing where we lift the middle finger and put our pinky down. And that bugs everybody when they're learning it. It's that contrary motion thing. It's kind of annoying, but you just have to learn how to do it as a clarinetist. So we go from C sharp to D that way. What we need for E major, though, is D sharp. There are two fingerings listed here. You're going to use the first fingering here for what it says, it's E flat. You're going to use that fingering, which is D, and you add everybody's favorite banana key right there. Please don't use the second fingering that's on this chart. This one, it's really out of tune. And it's on so many fingering charts, but it's really a fingering I only use once in every 5 to 8 years or something. It just really doesn't come in handy very often because it's too out of tune. And if you don't believe me, test it yourself. So I apologize because it's technically more easy to use that fingering in E major thirds, but if you want to sound good and sound closer to in tune, you need to use this fingering. So you have to practice going from C sharp to D sharp, okay? That can take a while, but fortunately you've got all summer if you're watching this video soon after it gets posted. All summer and all fall. Okay, next we go on up to E. So you just lift those. And if you notice, you've been doing, these are the same right-hand finger combinations that you've done in your chromatic scale. We went from here. Chromatically, you'd go there, you'd go there, you'd go there, okay? We've just left off the D natural because it's not in this particular key. So we have C sharp, we have D sharp, we have E. I do not have F sharp on here because it was not on this fingering chart. I've looked at some other ones and a lot of them don't have the in tune F sharp, so I figured why even bother? I'm just going to tell you what it is. A lot of charts will show you that this is F sharp. Thumb and register, middle finger, pinky key. That's it. Unfortunately, it's really flat. And so we have to learn how to play it with this key, with the banana key, okay? So you should first off, before you even try your thirds in the Altissimo register, you need to make sure you can play the scale. So going on up there, you have to practice that finger pattern and get used to C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp. And you have to get used to this back and forth business. And it takes a while, and there are no shortcuts. All of us who do this for a living probably spent a lot of time working on that, and we still do. Most of us still play our scales every day, if at all possible. So we've got the fingerings there. Now, in your thirds, the good thing about the D sharp fingering that I've asked you to use is that you have to play from D sharp to F sharp. So you already have banana key pressed, and all you have to do is lift these two fingers. Okay? So it's kind of like you're planning ahead. So oops. There's my upper register. You could probably spend a lot of time just starting on B in the upper register and working your way there. Now, if the voicing part is working really well for you and you're getting those in tune really comfortably and everything seems to be working out and you start trying to play faster, you'll realize that going back and forth with that pinky key in the Altissimo starts being really annoying. So as you pick up speed, you might actually experiment with leaving the pinky key off. And it will work only if all of the good tone production things are in place for you about the air, the embouchure, and the voicing. And when I play E major thirds and do it quickly, I leave the pinky key off, but that's only because all of those fundamentals are working for me. But when I was junior high and high school, I can guarantee you that that was not the case, and there's no way that I could play it correctly without the pinky key. So that is something that, lay the groundwork now really slowly with that pinky key, and you'll be able to get to a decent tempo with it. But I think that these things should help you gradually work through your E major thirds and play into the Altissimo register. And I would encourage you to never play this faster than you can control or sound good doing it. I think that if you walked in the door of the all-region auditions and you played your E major thirds really well, but it was slow, I bet they're going to like that a lot better than if you tried to play it really fast and were just a complete disaster in the Altissimo register and it didn't even resemble the pitches that should be there. So really take your time, be methodical about this, and best of luck working on this. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help you out. And your band directors know where to find me. You can look me up on the internet. Hopefully this helps.